Okay, I will come out and say it. I have resisted self-tape auditions forever. Every time I used to get them, I'd be like, oh man, I'd be so upset. And quite frankly, it's not something that I was used to doing all the time because I liked going in person and meeting the casting director and kind of getting those jitters and like, I'm here, I'm going to perform. But I'm going to show you how the pandemic actually created a silver lining for actors and how you can take advantage of self-tape auditions and live Zoom auditions. Let's get after it. So the most obvious reason that self-tape auditions are awesome is that you get to do it more than once. If you don't like your take, then you can nix it and you can continue. You can try different things, you can try different attitudes. You can even put 2 different takes together to give them an option of which one they would prefer. Now, if you're gonna do 2 different takes, literally do 2 different takes. Don't make the same thing again. Cool? Next is you get to fit it around your schedule. Now, for me as a mom, this is super important because I was always that person who would come to auditions way early, like before my call time, because I had to get back to school to pick up my kids, especially if it was like all the way across town. I needed to make sure that I needed to get there on time so that I can pick up my kids from school. And then when they're in bed at night, you can then perform it, you get your reader, and then you're all good. And you can just upload it. You have the time necessary to do that instead of like doing a rush audition, asking people, do you mind if I go ahead of you? I have to go pick up my kids at a certain time. I know you were here before me, but it's just really awkward. And that awkwardness is gone. Okay, the next cool thing about self-tapes is that you have no nerves. Like, you don't have to get nervous because you're in your own space. It's super comfortable. You don't have to see your competition. And you don't have to like go into yourself and get in your head when you're looking at other people, if they look the part or whatever. You were chosen, so then you obviously look the part. But now you don't have to get in your head about other people being in the same room with you or chit chat or anything like that. I was definitely one of those people that didn't chit chat, and then if I'd hear chit chat, sometimes it throws off my game. Don't have that anymore when I have a self-tape audition. You get to learn from your mistakes. I realized I have a lot of habits that I used to have in self-tapes, and most of the time it was because I'm a very broad person. I'm very animated, and I like just being broad. And that's like my comedy is in that. I'm a theater actor. I did musical theater. I was in opera, and in opera, like, you have to use your face because nobody understands what the hell you're saying because you're singing another language and you're like, whoa! And then you have to be able to emote with your face because that's all you have. So for me, I was like, whoa, you can see everything. Like, you can literally just see the emotion behind the eyes. You literally don't have to say anything. Breaking up? Oh. You can see everything in your eyes without actually having to move. I didn't know that until I started watching myself on tape. Just going back, like, let me dial that down a little bit. And just being able to study myself. And it's actually quite empowering because you don't really know what goes on the tape when you're casting or auditioning live. Self-tapes set you apart, not just by your choices, but your work ethic. I've seen some of the casting directors talking where they have said that they had to put out way more openings for auditions for roles that they cast on self-tapes because like almost half of the people don't even submit tapes. So you already don't have that, right? But then you have people who don't follow the directions. And sometimes there's a lot of direction that it feels like an IQ test or an aptitude test. And you're like, did I do this correctly? Did I write this correctly? Like, you have to go over line by line by line. So it just kind of shows what type of person you are. And for me, I'm very detail oriented, and I do spend a lot of time on my self-tapes. I literally did a self-tape this weekend for a commercial with my family, and legit, it took me 5 hours. Nope, I'm gonna call it 6 hours, because the night before I was doing the shot list. And then I spent all morning doing it and then editing it together and like making it entertaining to watch. Hi, we're the King family.
My name's Ella and I'm 5. I'm Emily and I'm 3.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Kristen. It's just something that I like to do. It's like the extra care that I put in, and I think that shows when I do an audition. Even if I don't book it, I know that I'm going to have a self-tape that's memorable because I put the time in and the work ethic to get it done. So now that you've created this library of self-tape auditions, okay, you can now use those to leverage getting an agent, showing them what you can do, especially if you don't have a reel, but you've been auditioning. You can prove to your agents or managers, hey, listen, I'm really good at this type of stuff. And also, you can create your own stuff. And another thing that I do is anything that I don't book, I try and post later on. Like if it's a self-tape and I'm like, I'm really proud of this self-tape. And I know they didn't pick me, but I'm gonna post this self-tape because I really am proud of the work, and I think that it can show like a whole nother side of me. Just in case I wasn't clear, do not post your auditions on any site at all. The only time that I condone posting your auditions is after the part has already been booked and it has already aired. I'd even give it a little time for it to air. Okay? I also, for my own sake, I feel like I put all this time into auditioning and doing a self-tape, and I honestly don't know if the person on the other end is watching more than 5 seconds of it or even going past my slate. They might get to my slate and be like, nah, she done with the part, and then swipe me out. But I wanna know that I did this work for somebody. So I have a very close-knit acting group, like very, and we have this thing where we will share part of our self-tape to be like, oh yeah, like to get some feedback. And then of course we delete them when we're done. And everyone knows like the code is you do not share on any type of platform, especially my mom. My mom doesn't even know how to use all the different things. It's like a way for you to get some feedback, which you don't normally get from casting directors. In fact, you never get feedback from casting directors unless they call you back. Because you're not on the casting director's time, and maybe there might be a role that you were not cast for, but you ask your reps like, hey, do you think that you could give me the sides to the other role? So then you take those sides, self-tape it, and then give it to your agent or your manager to then pitch you to the casting director. It may not work. They may not even see it. You may have wasted your time, but at least you can send it to your manager and your agent, and they can see what else you can do, and they might have a different idea. So those are the cool things about self-tape auditions. And now for my favorite, live Zoom auditions. I might be a little bit obsessed with live Zoom auditions. Only because, one, it's in my own space. I know how my room is. I know how it's filled up. I almost feel like a sense of power when the CD is in my room. You know that phrase, book the room? Well, it's like, well, this is my room, so welcome to my space. It's almost like I'm offering a little bit of vulnerability as well, because they're getting to see an idea of who I am. I don't normally shoot with like a backdrop because I do it on my computer, so you can see my piano, you can see my guitar, you can see lighting kits and things like that. So it's just like when a casting director comes in, they see all that stuff, they're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, she does music, blah, blah. Ideas. Okay, so when the casting director says, Kristen, you're on deck, that's usually a time when I get out the last bit of my jitters. I warm up, I work on the lines, or I'll take a walk, I'll drink some water. If you want, you can pass gas. Whatever it is, you can do whatever you want, really loud, scream into a pillow, anything that you want to get those things out that would probably have been weird or strange if you were waiting in a waiting room. Or my favorite is when you read the lines like this and you're like looking over and you don't want to look like a weirdo, but like basically everybody's doing the same thing. Like really, you can't really practice your lines when you're like saying it quietly. It just comes out differently. You know what I mean? It's just weird. And then you're like creeping over your shoulder and you're just like, okay, is there some other people watching me? Are they seeing my choices? Like all kinds of weird stuff happens when you're live. And then you get into the room and you're like, that is not at all how I practiced it at home. And then all that shit goes to mush. Well, you are at home, so now it doesn't matter. Okay, with Zoom auditions, I feel surprisingly closer to the casting directors. Maybe because they literally are a lot closer than when they're really far away, or when you're in a commercial audition, the clients, you can't see them because they're like in a room behind, or when they're in the callback, they're all there. Either way, I can hide them all on Zoom and I can just keep the reader, except for when they decide they want to spotlight you, in which case you cannot hide yourself and you're looking at yourself and it can be really distracting. So I take a window that's already open on my computer and I hide myself so that all I see is the reader in the left part of the screen. Lee Daniels Butler. I've auditioned for her a couple of times, but I hadn't ever had a one-on-one audition with her. Usually she'll be in the room with a bunch of other people for the callback, but like the first audition, I never get to be with Lee Daniels Butler, okay? So I had an audition during the pandemic we're still in, and I was totally expecting her assistant to come on, but instead it was like, Lee Daniels Butler, oh my God, whoo! I had to pull myself together a little bit, be like, oh, hi, welcome to my home. Thank you so much for calling me into this audition role. Meanwhile, inside I'm like, no! Oh my God, it's Lee Daniels Butler, she's in my house, oh my God, Lee Daniels Butler is in my house. Oh, okay, yeah, I read for the part, It was amazing. It was like an amazing feeling. And I somehow felt closer to her after that. And I feel like I'm more memorable if she's been to my house. It's very weird. I don't know. I love it. So I think the best part of self-tape auditions and live Zoom auditions is a sense of freedom. Freedom that actors don't usually have in the room. I also feel like it opens up a door for a lot more opportunity, especially if you don't live in LA. You can now have agents like all over the country. What I'm trying to say is all bets are off. You can literally be anywhere and audition for the roles that you want. Of course, you have to make connections, you have to build relationships, and how you do that is you keep auditioning. What are your thoughts? Comment below. Do you like self-tapes more than live auditions? I wanna know. And if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe. Tell your friends. But thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you next week.